Or sitting there with their dictionary going, David's got it wrong. Not the first, won't be the last. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's Remind podcast. My name's David Masterton, and I'm joined with the wonderful Dr. Ashleigh Moreland. Oh my God, how did I mess that up?
Hey.
How you going, Ash?
Awesome. So good. So good. Happy to be here. Happy to be chatting about love. I love love. I love love. I'm
it's a
so
third
happy
week.
we get to have this conversation today.
Yeah. It's like the third week we've been
so
talking about
good.
love. So it all started, I'm going to check to look over on my other screen. It all started with, how do you love someone even though they've hurt you? That was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Last week was, what's some of the dumbest things you've done for love? And this week it's going to be about what's some of the best things you've done, or what are some of the best things you can do for love. So coming from like a kind of like a broken, well, not necessarily broken, but an unhealed or trauma-informed love into a more authentic, this is, it feels right kind of love. So from the outset, I'm going to say that this is going to be a little bit of fish out of water for me, because I've done a lot of work on, sort of getting rid of the trauma-informed things that I needed to do, and into a space
I
where
want to just reframe the trauma-informed, because trauma-informed is a literal term that is used where people will say trauma-informed is like it's informed by a deep understanding of trauma. Whereas
gotcha.
I think what you're meaning when you use that word is like it's driven by trauma. Like
I'll use trauma-driven then. How about that?
Yeah,
Trauma-driven.
Yeah. Cool.
And
Just in case anyone's sitting at home confused.
Or sitting there with their dictionary going, David's got it wrong. Not the first, won't be the last. Anyway, we'll say trauma-driven.
Yeah.
And so here I am waiting to use everything that I've got in a healthy one, because I haven't really gotten into a healthy one yet.
By the way, I mean, this is not a recruitment drive, but Dave's single, everyone.
Ah!
So if you're a single lady.
Yep. When you said that, the whole Beyonce single ladies came up with the hand, everything.
I love that.
And
how cool is that? Like your billboard for life is, I'm showing up and I'm doing the work, and I'm not perfect, and sometimes things get messy and ugly, but I'm showing up and I'm doing the work, and I've got an open mind and I'm committed. And it's like, that is amazing. That's so rare to find, and such a gem to find it. It's really cool.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
It's been
brutal, but worth it.
For you.
Yep, absolutely.
Blocked by Dr. Ash.
Yeah, on YouTube. So what dating app are you on? YouTube. Oh, right. Interesting.
This is off topic, but I used to joke with people. Actually, maybe it shouldn't be a joke. Maybe I should legitimately do it. But early on, I had these clients who were single, and they were like, oh, where in the dating pool can I find these people who are willing to work on themselves? I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should start this dating community, like a dating app, where people are Dr. Ash endorsed because they've actually done the work. They've shown up. They've been vulnerable. And they're like, yes, that's a great idea. Can you at least just vet people? I don't expect them to be perfect, because that's not normal, but I want to just do relationship with someone who's willing to grow with me. I'm like, that's great. I think there's an actual need for that.
I've been racking my brain to try and do some sort of remind pun around a dating app, but I fell short. Maybe later in the episode I might be able to get something. But I guess coming back to what we're talking about is going to be, it's either what in theory would be really healed things to do for love, or examples from people like yourself in a relationship that you're doing the the healed things within a relationship? Like, what's the most loving, and what's, if we had to do the equal and opposite of, dumb, what's the smartest thing you've done for love? So, I mean,
yeah. Love
we've
it.
kind of covered off on the first thing is, and probably a lot of it in the last episode, and a bit about my own journey is, well, for me, it's been about making myself available for that true and authentic
Emotionally available.
love. Yeah. Well, emotionally, spiritually, the whole lot. But it's pretty much all the same thing. You've looked at the version of yourself previously. Your intuition's telling you, your gut's telling you there's something else for you. Then it's been reinforced after a slow simmer of trying to convince yourself to kind of stay. Then you sort of break free and you go through the bruising, battling, healing journey, which is also beautiful and incredible on the other side. That's one of the biggest things. If you're drawn in that direction, and in that direction is not for everyone. If you have this thing where I don't like the person I am, I don't like who I am in this relationship, there's two options. One of them is a direction I took, which is dipping out, okay, because that was for me. The other one could be using that catalyst within the relationship to say, hey, I don't like where this is going. I don't like who I am. I don't like maybe how you make me feel about myself. I don't like all of this, but I want to work on it with you. And then that's the catalyst for growth together. But either way, there's a catalyst.
The biggest red flag is I don't like who you are in our relationship. That's the biggest red flag for me, because I'll go, okay, but what about you? What about you? Do you know the really interesting thing is I would say 98% of the time when someone initiates contact with me because they want help in their relationship, it's the woman who initiates it because they don't like the relationship and the way their partner's showing up. And it's very triggering and activating for them to turn around and look within and go, yeah, but how am I showing up? And what is the standard that I've been accepting for the last 2 years, 10 years, 50 years? It's confronting. So I think the thing that makes this... Yep.
I was just going to say, right, in that scenario, I could guarantee in my relationships gone past, I'm looking at it from my version. Now imagine it from my partner or my wife's at the time version. They weren't happy and they were looking at this guy. And I could guarantee they probably didn't like the version they were staring at with me. And I wasn't happy with it and all of that. So chances are, if you're coming to Dr. Ash, or if you're coming at it from this point of view of sort of like, I don't like that person, well, that person is going through their own stuff. Because it's not just about, I see it, I feel it, therefore, I'm going to rise above it all and the other person just doesn't care and therefore not interested and therefore could be doing a whole lot better. Chances are they're feeling it just as much. And it's not just going to be about, in my case, just about me. The way I was acting had an influence on how my partner was acting at the time.
100%. Absolutely. And this is again where the difference is, if I am not even willing to look at the part that I've played, but I recognize I'm not happy and I outsource my happiness to you changing, that in itself is dysfunctional. And this was me. This was me for 8 years. I was like, our relationship has all these problems and I'm not happy and I never feel loved and you don't do this and you don't do that and you don't do this and you don't do that. And I wanted to blame him, which I, in my head, went, if you would just do this, if you would just show up like that, if you would just look like this, if you would just, then I would be happy.
Yeah.
And if you loved me, you'd do that. Okay, so this is the dysfunction. And then on the flip side of that, if I wasn't willing to look within and go, what is the dysfunction I'm bringing to this relationship? What is the part in me that wants him to do that? What is the part in me that's outsourcing the love of self to him and making it his responsibility to love me. Because I don't even love myself. I hired him to do it. I recruited him to do it. And he's not doing it well enough. So it was so mind-blowing. And so for me, there's a huge, huge conversation around this when people come and they want to do their relationship stuff or whatever. And I go, okay, that's awesome. Both of you have to understand that the dysfunction in your relationship has been co-created, equally co-created. It's not his fault. It's not your fault. This is not about blame. And the difference for me when I did marriage counseling in my first marriage, it was throwing mud, and it was he said and she said, and it wasn't very well facilitated. And it was still a level of blame and like self-righteousness. And that, I don't know, maybe if it was just the therapist we saw, maybe it was just us being so rigid and in our bias and not having grown enough ourselves to even be able to handle a higher level conversation. But for me, it actually was the nails in the coffin that said, you will never be able to make me happy. Oh!
Yeah.
Then start healing journey. Then start going, wow, would I have wanted to be married to me? How did I show up in that? What are the things that he did to me? And what part did I play in that? And what did I allow? What did I not call out? Where was my lack of boundaries? Where was this? Where was that? What did I agree to that I didn't want to agree to? Like everything, that's me. That was how I showed up. So isn't it? It's terrifying. It's confronting and mind-blowing, but also so liberating and so freeing when I have two people sit in front of me who are both willing to own their stuff as a sovereign individual and choosing to cross that bridge together to get to the promised land, to have the relationship that they want to have, to build the life they want to have, to demonstrate to their kids. If you sit there and you think, what sort of relationship do I want my kids to have? You need to be able to demonstrate it. You can't be doing one thing and saying, oh, but don't do what I've done.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're coming back to the smartest things that we would be doing for love. And one thing, and just going back to that point, would I now marry the version of myself that was in my first two marriages? No way.
Yeah.
I wasn't a bad person, right? Just going to put it out there. I was not a bad person. However,
no one's an inherently bad
completely
person.
Emotionally shut off in the first marriage, a little bit better in the second marriage, but compared to where I am now, the level of vulnerability is sort of incredible. But the one thing that guy used to use in love was logic and negotiating.
Yes.
So the smartest thing
Analysis,
I could sort of say, let's swap it, right? The smartest thing you can do for love is be vulnerable. Now, I want to say at any cost, however, there is a really big sort of outlying fringe, which that can be quite dangerous. If you're vulnerable consistently and it keeps on being thrown back in your face, that's not healthy. So that part, once you reach that part, leave it alone. However, for myself, where I was coming from a place where it was just absolutely not, won't even touch it with a barge pole. I don't want to be vulnerable because I don't want to be disappointed. Not that I was even aware of all of this.
Yes.
And this is my projection onto it. It's not the fact that my partners at the time would have hurt me. They probably would have absolutely loved it. That you allow yourself to be in the emotion, right? And I guess coming back to your therapy, the couples counselling, if it comes down to objection, Your Honour, overruled, here's the logic, this and that, and backwards and forwards, who's right, who's wrong. If it comes back to the emotion part of it, which you can only get to the emotion part when vulnerability is the key to open that door. If you can't, like that's one of the smartest things you can do for love. And then
Yeah,
you'll know.
absolutely. The key to vulnerability is authenticity. Authenticity is a strong sense of self. So, what I learned was a healthy relationship, the smartest thing I've ever done for love is develop my sense of self. And I say that because if I am all of me and I can show up as my best self, my partner will show up as their best self. And a relationship where two people are committed to being the best version of themselves they've ever been and constantly growing towards that and constantly evolving, that's me. I can control the version of me that I'm showing up as. I can take responsibility for my healing. I can commit to my growth. I can explore my own spiritual journey. That's me. And if I'm committed to doing that, and my partner is committed to doing that, our relationship goes from strength to strength. It gets healthier and healthier and healthier and healthier. And he drew something once years ago. It was literally one of the most life-changing visuals I've ever had when it comes to relationship. Now, he drew it with a triangle and God was at the top. The Bible says God is love. If you replaced love, whatever that looks like for you, replace that with sense of self. The closer you get to your authentic self, again, biblically it says we are made in the likeness and image of God. So if we are moving closer to God, we are becoming more of who we authentically and truly are. So he drew this triangle, and down the bottom there was him on one corner, me on the other corner, and there was a big distance between us. We were far apart. But as we moved up the sides of the triangle and both equally, like both of us became more authentic with who we were created to be, and we actually got closer to God that sat at the top, to love, to our authentic self, we got closer together.
Yeah, beautiful.
And it was such a powerful visual representation for me that by far the healthiest thing that I've done is to learn to love me well, to learn who I am, to learn who authentically, not my trauma responses, not my pain body, not anything else, but to actually get to know me, all of me, my fears, my worries, my concerns, but my strengths, my gifts, my purpose, my reason for being, what lights my soul on fire. When I started to tune in, to tap into that, and he's started to do the same, there is a level of intimacy and closeness in our relationship when we are connected to the essence of who we really are that I've never experienced ever before in my life. That's powerful for me. So whenever I find myself in the dysfunction of looking at him going, well, if you just, that's a deception. And the deception is because I'm now looking at him instead of looking up there, looking at the top of the triangle. The second I turn and look at him, I'm no longer moving up the side of the triangle. And I'm expecting him to change under the illusion that if he just changed, things would be better and we would feel closer. But that's not the case. If we both are becoming the best versions of ourselves, both equally focused on moving up the sides of the triangle, guess what happens to our relationship? We become closer. We become more intimate. We become safer, psychologically and emotionally safe. That's vulnerability.
It's incredible. And
Have you ever seen that before?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it before, but it makes a whole lot of sense. Especially when like the two of you, and I hear it a lot, where it's sort of like, don't focus on the other person, focus on yourself. And when you focus on yourself, the other person, well, what's meant for you will come to you, as opposed to this, I have to have this particular person, or I have to have this love to feel loved, right? As opposed to you focus on yourself, you focus on you being authentic, and you're no longer as trauma-driven as you're starting to heal through it. Then suddenly you know that you don't, like, I suppose the most magical love in my mind is when you really don't need it at all. It's a compliment. It's not something that fixes
Yeah.
you, or it has to be there to feel loved, right? It's when you can
Yes.
feel loved by yourself, which for me is still, I can feel a lot of it, but there's still something to me where it's like, gee, if I had to explain it, it's like I feel safe. I can kind of feel held by myself, but there's no sort of there's no desperation. Let's put it that way. There's no need. There's no
Yeah.
desperation to sort of go, my life would be perfect so long as I was loved. Well, imagine I was loved already. And that's kind of how I feel. So when you bring someone in who brings that intimacy, that brings that
Isn't that
closeness,
fascinating?
yeah, you bring that closeness in, and it's going to take what I've got, and it's going to just level like the whole next level. It doesn't mean that I am completely like that. I have no desire to be with anyone. No, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
coming at it.
The image that
You go.
the image I just got in my mind just then was the difference between a whole, as in HOLE,
Oh
versus
yes.
a whole, WHOLE. And love, people think that love is what fills the hole. It fills the gaps in us. It's supposed to complete us. What a load of lies. Because in my experience, when I outsourced the filling of those holes and outsourced my love to other people to have to fill the gaps and fill the holes that were within my sense of self, to validate me, to reassure me, to let me know that I was worthy or that I was good enough, or when I outsourced that, that was the dysfunction. The healthy love is when I am whole, when I become the fullness of who I am, when I'm integrated in mind, body, and spirit. I know who I am. I know what I like. I know what I value. I know what sets my soul on fire. I know myself deeply and intimately, and I am whole. Love is the wrapping paper around the thing that's whole. It adds, it lightens it up, it brightens it up, it what's the word? Not exacerbates, but like it
Amplifies.
highlights, it makes better
Highlights. Yeah.
what is already great, what is already whole, right? And that's where the point that I got to when my marriage ended, and I was like, I can pay my own bills. I'm not scared of being a solo mum because I raised my kids by myself for 4 years in another state to where my husband lived. I'm not afraid of being a single mum. I'm not afraid of not being able to finance myself because I was the primary earner. I'm not afraid of, like, I literally don't need a man in my life, except I didn't love who I was and I didn't feel worthy. And so I had these holes in my inner self. So at that time, I needed to outsource that love, that validation, that sense of self-worth, that sense of all that sort of stuff. I needed to outsource that. So I would go straight into dating to try and fill those holes so that I didn't have to sit with the discomfort of feeling incomplete. So again, healthy love is you do the inner work. I do the inner work so that we as individuals can be whole. And when we as individuals are whole and we're not outsourcing, we get to be each other's wrapping paper. We get to highlight, we get to put them, shine the light on them, and it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. And I'm definitely sort of seeing in my future that I'm not going to be the completely, fully healed version of myself. That means that when I come into union with my forever person, that everything's going to be rainbow skittles and unicorns. Absolutely not. I'm loving and I'm welcoming the fact that there's going to be a level of healing to come within the relationship and mirrors
Absolutely.
that are going to be shown, but at a depth where I'm assuming that you can't possibly do solo. There are some things that you do and you're meant to do by yourself, but I can feel that there's going to be things that you're meant and you need to do in union, where you could ultimately
Yes.
shed the full, the full vulnerability,
And you
being
can't even expose
completely.
those wounds on your own. You can't even expose those wounds on your own. And this is why I say to people, my group program is specifically designed to help expose things in you that on your own you can't expose, because you need to have those mirrored to you. And when you're surrounded by such a diverse group of people who show up differently, who have different experiences and this and this and this, they're mirroring that to you. There are wounding in romantic relationship, because this is how we experience love. When we think about love, we think about our romantic relationships and our kids. And so when we think about love, guess where our greatest growth happens? Parenting and relationships. And we need those relationships to mirror to us our pain, where without that relational dynamic, without that dance, without that experience, we will never get to experience the fullness of who we are, because we don't know the pain that's hiding within. And it's so beautiful. I have people who are single who come, they'll do their work and they'll say, oh, I don't want to go into a new relationship until I'm healed. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't heal relational wounding when you're not experiencing relational experiences. You can heal the stuff from the past, but it's understanding the living, breathing, walking dynamic of relationship. When you meet people, what comes up for you? When they say something, what comes up for you? When it's time for them, they read a message and don't reply, what comes up for you? You're not going to know until you start to have those lived experiences. And so it's so valuable.
I can only imagine. But the important thing here is to sort of also look and sort of say there is a certain amount of healing that you will get to that allows you to be able to be prepared to be able to heal in union. So as opposed
Yes.
to, I can only heal in union. No, there are absolutely things that you can do and that you should be doing if the opportunity
Absolutely.
or if you're being drawn to do it, to be single, to do that. So that
Absolutely.
when you are feeling triggered, you can be observant. When the other person's being triggered, that you could be compassionate, but it's a easy compassionate. It's not sort of something that you're tolerating. It's something that sort of you go, okay, there's an understanding, there's an empathy. And then through that, you can sort of come together. And I think another important thing about being by yourself or healing yourself is knowing, how do you want to be loved? And that's been a massive thing for me, because
Yeah.
when you're being loved by other people, they're loving you in their way. And sometimes it can be incredible. Like when someone gives you exactly what you're looking for and exactly what you need, and you don't need to tell them, my God, it's like ecstasy, right? However,
Yeah.
if you don't know
Absolutely.
what you want, or if you don't know how to guide a person, because they might be giving you everything that they would want in a relationship, but for you it might be
Yeah.
different. Like, let's just say, like the 5 love languages, right? For example, if you know you like physical touch, gift giving, acts of service, words of affirmation, all of those things, if you kind of know, then you know what to ask for, or you know how to help that person do for you, because you might be with someone who's big on words of affirmation, but you're all about physical touch. And if you can't sort of figure out how to do that, then that leaves a little bit of a hole. So if you know what you want. And the funny thing is, when I left my first wife, that was one of the parting gifts that she gave me, was this book. And I figured out there were 2 things that were really high on my agenda: physical touch and quality time. And
Yeah.
I've realized, and the funniest thing is, I had a real big issue around words of affirmation because I thought they were a waste of time. And
Ah.
going through my healing, I've realized I love them all. Now, yes, I have a preference, which is physical touch. That's right up there. but they're all very valuable. And so it's about sort of going, okay, me as a person, through being single, through understanding myself, I'm actually understanding what I want and how I want to be loved, and sort of what things I'm looking to create in my life. And a big part of that's going to be how I want to love and how I want to be loved, and what I want to create around a partner, around, my family environment, house, car, career, service, purpose, all of those things.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have had it without being able to focus on myself to go, okay, because otherwise it would have been what other people have said is reasonable. And then for me, then to sort of go, I'll then add my preference to that. So
yeah, I
loving yourself.
100% hear you on that. And I've pondered with love languages a lot, because it was a book that I read early on, and it made a lot of sense to me. And I'm interesting that you say that throughout, as you've progressed through your healing journey, you've realized that you're all of them, because I believe we all are. We're all wired for all of it, because we are love, and love is expressed in all the ways. What I have found in working with hundreds, I don't even know, maybe it's thousands of people around the world now, is that love language preferences come about in one of two ways. In a healthy and functional way, our preference is the language that we experienced safe love. If we grew up feeling really loved and really seen and really heard, it's what is the association? When I think about love, what does that look or feel like? So that's the healthy side. The other side is, if I grew up feeling unloved, unimportant, unworthy, why? What was missing? So maybe my parents told me all the words of affirmation and said, you're amazing, you're great, but they never held me. They never hugged me when I cried. And so the missing element that I craved to know that I was loved was touch. And so I grow up placing an overemphasis on touch as my primary love language, because that's the way that I needed to feel loved as a child that I didn't get. And so it's a really interesting dynamic, and they're the two options. But what I find is that as people come up the sides of the triangle and become more as who, like the wholeness of who they are, all of the elements of love come into play, all of them. And so I find that really fascinating. So, and also coming back, I think, to the point that you made, someone could be willing to love you in all the ways that you want to be loved, but if you don't know if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what you like, if you don't know what feels loved, if what feels like love for you, if you don't know how to communicate that well, then there is nothing that person can do. They're going to be perpetually failing. There is not a single thing that person will be able to do that will fill that gaping hole in you where you don't know your sense of self. You're not connected to your sense of self. So for me, I break this into, when we think about healthy love, I break this down into two sides. One is for self, healthy love for self, and the other is healthy love for others. So for me, healthy love for myself is knowing myself really well. It's prioritizing my own care and my own needs. Now, not my wants, not my desires, but my actual healthy spirit needs above other responsibilities. It's what else? So honoring authenticity, it's knowing myself. It's loving myself well is making really mindful decisions, not rushing into things. And, being in the business sphere, I see this a lot, where there's really pushy sales tactics, where there's things like create a sense of urgency and do this and do that and do these offers. And all of those things are driven by human psychology. There is literally a whole brand of marketing called neuromarketing, which is looking at how is our human brain and our human behavior, how can we manipulate that to drive your decision-making behaviors to purchase. And that in itself, I look at that and go, I love myself well when I make mindful decisions. What does that mean? When I come into the essence of who I am and I feel into, at a spiritual level, is this right for me or is this not? Now, I can't do that if I have a disconnected sense of self, because I'm going to read the words, I'm going to get drawn into the marketing tactics, and I'm going to feel like that's unfair and it's unjust and this and this and this. But actually, it was my disconnection from my sense of self and not loving myself well to take the time to see how it felt in my spirit, to see if it was right for me in the first place. And I've had some pretty expensive lessons in that. I've had some pretty expensive lessons. So mindful decision making is loving myself well, having boundaries that honor my own standards, my own values, having boundaries, like a really simple one with my kids. I have a boundary that says we speak kindly, which means that if my kids are being unkind, it's actually on me to love us well, to encourage them to change their language so that their language is kind. It's okay for you to be unhappy. It's not okay for you to be unkind. So it's like, that to me is loving well. Then for others, I mean, the outward stuff, all the love languages, it's showing appreciation, it's being vulnerable, it's active listening, it's being supportive, it's acts of kindness, it's quality time, it's all the love languages, all the physical touch, the affection.
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to the physical touch and me, the one thing that was probably the most, a very confronting thing, which I did not expect it to be confronting, was when I was shown or grasped the concept of true giving and receiving in physical touch. And so the exercise was from sort of elbow to the tip of your fingers, right? That's the area. Now, it was with another person, and the brief was to give them, to be giving them exactly what they needed. And it comes down to how they wanted to be touched, right? Now, to be able to do that, they have to know. And I found that quite okay, because this person, very well trained and understood what they wanted, they would tell me and I would kind of do it, right? And then it came to me receiving, which you'd think is the easiest. But the condition was I had to tell them between my elbow to the tip of my fingers how I wanted to be touched. And if that didn't give me a bloody brain melt, I was stumped. I'm like, what came up? It's sort of like, I don't know the answer to this question. What if some shame and fear came up? I'm like, well, what if I tell them and they think it's stupid? What if I do?
Yeah.
And then I realised there's this big gaping hole of, how I like to receive is when I just let you do what you think is right and then I'll tell you. And I went, wow, okay. So I felt as though I was a very sort of hands-on, confident kind of guy, and realised in this one simple exercise, there was an opportunity there. And so it felt weird even just saying it. Right, I want you to massage here, and then I want to interlock our fingers together, and then I want you to sort of rub, the palm of my hand in this kind of direction. And then I want you to gently sort of just run your fingers from my fingertips down the inside. It's very confronting when you have, especially for me at that point in time. But then you expand that and you start to go, well, it's confronting because I've never really done it. The way it's always been is they just do it, and then some things I'll really like and some things I won't, and maybe I'll say something and maybe I won't.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because so much of this, like I talk a lot about spirituality is a lived experience. it's walking day by day through the day. And a big thing that people kind of are confronted with is, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like. And the fun thing about that is you get to explore. And, think about even sexually, right? When people are exploring safely sexually, something, that exact scenario, quite often I find that's the dynamic with women. Women will have no idea what they want or need because their needs were completely suppressed in their early life. If they wanted something and that want was shut down, if they needed something, even if they needed a hug, they needed emotional support, they needed to cry, they needed reassurance, and those needs weren't met, well, then we disconnect from our needs. And we'll go, oh, whatever you think, that'll do. That'll be right. That's fine.
At least you're
Or
trying.
we know that it's not right for us, but we don't speak up. Maybe because it wasn't safe to speak up. Maybe because we just don't know how. And so there's all these things that come into play. And I see this a lot where, like, even thinking sexually, if someone isn't meeting your needs, but you can't explore and be creative and playful and explore, well, what feels good for you? Does that feel nice? Give me feedback. That activity is so, so powerful. And I actually, when you started saying it, I was like, oh, did I tell you to do that? That wasn't a me thing, because that's something I get people to do as well. But it's also, honestly, that exact thing is how I have taught my kids to be able to express their preferences and use their voice and voice their needs. With my son, I used to touch in different ways. I used to do nice, gentle touches. I used to do pokes. I used to pinch. I used to do these things. And, like, obviously with his consent, it was us mutually playing and exploring what he liked and didn't like in his body. And his job was to say, I really liked that. Can you do that again? Or, I don't like that. Please stop. And so it was, first of all, it was him tuning into his body and noticing what did or didn't feel good for him. Second of all, it was then giving him a frame of reference around, if something doesn't feel good for him, how can he communicate that? And how can he uphold a boundary? And I had my absolute butt kicked by him, I don't know, a couple of months ago now. I did this years ago, this whole pinching, poking kind of activity. And it's really powerful. They use that language a lot. I had my butt absolutely whooped by him a few months ago, where we do snuggle time every night, and I wanted to have fun because it was fun for me to tickle. And he is cracking up laughing, and he's, absolutely, like, squealing and laughing, and we were both laughing together. It was really fun for me until it stopped being fun for him. And he said, I can't remember exactly what he said. It was along the lines of, basically, he set a boundary and said, I don't like it when you tickle me. You need to leave. And he literally kicked me out of his bedroom, and oh boy, was it like getting the cold water in the face. It was, I was literally stopped in my tracks. And it occurred to me that I violated his boundary in that moment. I violated something that he has communicated previously, that he doesn't like being tickled like that. He's communicated that previously, and I violated it because I wanted to enjoy the fun and the laugh, and I wanted to do that in the name of fun. But it wasn't fun.
I suppose he was laughing, so that gave you more incentive.
He was laughing,
to
absolutely,
keep on
but he
doing
was squirming, and he was squirming and all that sort of stuff. And when he was saying, no, and I was sort of kept going, like, that's awful. When I look back at that, I go, wow, I needed to have my butt kicked. He loved me so well, even though my ego was bruised, and even though I was like, whoa, are you being serious? And he's like, yes, get out of my room, please. And I was like a bit shaken up. I was kind of like, whoa, okay, wow, I'm so sorry, mate. And like guilt kicked in. I was like, I'm so sorry. I was just trying to have fun, and I tried to justify and all that, right? So it was confronting, and I needed to have my butt kicked in that moment, because in that moment, he loved him well, and he loved me well by upholding a boundary around safe touch. what did or didn't feel good for him. Isn't that crazy?
Well, it's been a big episode because I suppose if we had to sort of summarise that, what's the smartest things you can do for love? There's a common theme. It's finding you, right? It's all about you, right? It's not about the other person. And if you're worried that if you spend too much time focused on yourself and you won't find the person, then, maybe look up law of attraction, right? The more and more you work on yourself, the more and more you become the partner that you're looking for, you will attract it.
Yes.
Yep. And so
100.
It's really about, don't give away yourself for a relationship, because there could be something else out there that you're yearning for.
I agree. And 100%. And when we're talking about the law of attraction, that for me is, if you want someone to come into your life who loves all of you, the good, the bad, the ugly, who can love you unconditionally, you need to be all of you. You can't say, I want someone to love all of me when you're not all of you. So you need to be all of you to then invite someone to love the all of you that you are. Whereas if you only love 40% of you, and you're here going, I want someone to love all of me, but you're not even all of you. If you bring someone in to love you at the point of you only being 40% of who you truly are, by default, that person isn't the person to love all of you. So as you grow and as you become more of all of who you are, as you grow in your authenticity, as you grow in your integrity of self, as you grow in that relationship with your sense of self, the more you become the fullness of who you are, the more that person can love all of who you are. The limit to the love that I experience is the limit to how much I can show up as all of me.
100%.
It's so powerful. So,
it's like,
gosh.
It's like you want someone out there to love all of you and to see all of you. What do you love and what do you see when you look in the mirror? It's that.
And how much of you do you expose to the world? What about all the parts of shame and all the parts that you hide away? Oh my gosh, Dave. We better not open up another can of worms because we'll be here for another hour.
But I will just say one thing. It's also okay to still be on the path. Like when I look at myself, there's a lot that I really like, but there's also a lot that I'm still working on. But I can picture and envisage where it is that I'm wanting to be. And it doesn't need to be necessarily specific goals, but it could be just specific feelings and things like that. So it's okay to sort of go, all right, I look in the mirror and I certainly want to, change that. Or I look deep in my eyes and what do I see when I look deep in my eyes? And then work on those bits. You don't have to be a picture perfect, but at least be on the path, at least be walking that way, or at least not be afraid that if something pops up in your life that is taking you in that direction, that and you have confidence in yourself. Might not be the first time, might not be a second time, but you will get there because that's where you're going.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyway, as you're right, big one. I love that.
And as I reflect on my own relationship, my key learnings have been, we are growing together. Neither of us are the version of us that we need to be, but we're the version of us that we are in this season, which is a better version of us than we were a year ago, which is a better version of us we were 2 years ago, and I'm sure it will continue and continue.
Absolutely.
And one of my most favorite things is, we were speaking recently and I said, I never want to have a relationship where we're together because we're married, where we're together because it's an expectation or we're obligated to, or we've made a commitment, or we're together for the kids or anything like that. Every single day, I make a conscious choice to choose you, to choose this, to choose that, to choose us, to choose our family, to choose healing, to choose God. That's got to be an everyday conscious choice for us. And just the most beautiful thing of every day in a different way saying, I choose you. I choose you today. I choose you today. And it sets this frame for the day, and letting our kids observe that, letting our kids experience that. And it's so beautiful. I look at our relationship and go, I never imagined a relationship. I couldn't imagine having this relationship because I wasn't the version of me I needed to be to have it. And so, guys, as we say every week, we are doing this with you and for you. This is for you to help draw out of you who you are, who your essence is, where you're going, what you want from life. And if you want to go on a guided tour and to have your hand held through that journey home to you so that you can be the whole you and work towards that, contact us, let us know. Rise and Thrive is exactly that. That's what we do. That's what we're here for. And we've got you the whole way. Otherwise, these free resources, as you agree, are super full, packed full of value. And let us know what you want us to talk about next, where you want us to take this.
Yeah, I'm enjoying these sort of, like, this was a 3-part series around love. Guys, give us some indication. What's something you'd like us to explore a little bit more, and we'll have a look at it. Otherwise, you and I will pick a topic that's sort of a theme in our life, and we'll run it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Love it, love it, love it. Bye, guys. See you, Dave. Over and out.
Bye-bye.